You know what you're listening to?
Is that a trick question?
It's the I Still Love This Game podcast with your host, Matthew Damian.
He's an idiot. Don't listen to this. He's an idiot.
Welcome to episode 35. I Still Love This Game podcast.
That is a lot of podcasts if you're already at 35. Ooh.
Well, as you guys can hear, we have a guest. I didn't even get a chance to introduce him. He's already interrupted me. That's it. Get out of here. No, but if you guys are familiar with the Outside the Hype podcast, which is the first podcast I ever did, this guy was one of my favorite, if not my favorite guests to have on. LeMont Joyner, old clutch gamer. We used to have some fantastic discussions about football, which he would school me, and I'll be the first to admit he would school me in the American football discussions, but I think I can hold my own with basketball. So Lamont, welcome back to the show, and welcome to the I Still Love This Game podcast.
Feels good. Feels good to be out here. I still love this game. Looking forward to get into it and talking about the topics we have. We have the NFL playoffs. You got your book, which is a fantastic read. And you know how we always drop in our top 10 list. Mine seems to change like each week. I feel like yours is always constant.
No, that's not true. Mine has changed quite a lot over the last 6 months. I had Wilt in my top 10. I had Wilt probably about 7th or 8th. I've got him at 2 now. I got Bill Russell at 5. He was always 2. So that changes. Who's changing yours recently?
After I read your book, because you're very big on bigs, and I am too. And then you like reminded me kind of like why big men are so important. So I moved up Tim Duncan. I moved up Wilt. And that's probably about it.
Okay, so refresh my memory. What is your top 10 then?
My top 10 is Jordan, Bron, Kobe, Kareem, Shaq, Duncan, Wilt. People are going to hate my top 10. And then I have Magic, Bird, Russell.
Hey, well, you're a lot bigger on bigs than what I am. My goodness. Is 7 of your top 10 are centers? Did I count that right, or is it 6?
Probably.
And you didn't even include Akeem in your top 10 as well. Some people slide Akeem in there, and that sort of overpopulates it.
I already dropped Russell down to 10. I mean, this guy, especially after going through your book, he has 10 rings, 11 rings.
11 rings, yeah.
Like, this guy is a phenomenal competitor. Like 11 rings in any era. Like,
honestly, you could make the argument that he has 13 because 2 of them were as a player coach.
Wow.
So that's insane by itself, to be a player coach and to win the title twice.
That's crazy. And the only reason I don't have him over Russell, I'm sorry. I mean, the only reason why I don't have him ahead of Wilt is because so many people from that time period said Wilt was the best. Same thing with Bird and Johnson. They always said that Johnson was better than Bird. So I will give credence to those that watch because, I'm a 80s baby for sure. So I only saw Jordan and these 2000s players.
Right. I'll be honest with you, though. I can't be too hard on you. I have softened a little bit when it comes to Russell. I had Russell at number 2 for a long period of time. Now he's number 5. And the way I thought about it, well, Wilt dominated in terms of scoring and individual play. There's no question about that. No one, not even Jordan, comes close to the numbers that Wilt put up. And then, so that's beyond dispute. And then I would often say, well, how do I value winning or do I value the numbers? But when it comes to winning and the winning culture, was it Bill Russell or was it Red Auerbach? And that's a legitimate question because Red Auerbach was absolutely the architect of those Celtics teams. So I can't give him all that credit.
Okay, fair. Yeah, because he definitely doesn't get all because it definitely is a team sport and a coach is very important in basketball, especially if you have a fantastic coach.
Yeah. Well, he was so far ahead of the curve, not just in terms of coaching, but just player management, bringing in the right players.
Yeah.
He was. It was kind of funny because you talked about how you're an 80s baby, right? It's kind of funny because in the 60s, there was a stigma against black players. And then in the 80s, there was a stigma against white players. And he took advantage of both of those. He was able to pick up white players, whether it was Bill Walton or Larry Bird or Kevin McHale, Danny Ainge as well. And he was able to build a dynasty out of that. And in the 60s, he was able to pick up the Sam Joneses, the Bill Russells, obviously, and build the greatest dynasty in the history of sports off that. So he was He was a genius, man. He knew what he was doing. He saw it before a lot of others. But
that is very true.
I'll be honest with you. I usually don't seek out people's opinions, especially with the book. That they usually tell me what they like or disliked about it. I want to hear, and I know you'll be honest with me. I want to hear what you disagreed with in the book.
Okay. It's funny. I love the book. Like, I actually did. Like, I'm not just saying that. Like, that was an excellent read. Of course, I disagreed with a few things, not as many as like you would think. I remember a sentence you said, which you know I disagree with 100%, is you said that Pau Gasol was the best player in the 2010 Lakers team. Celtics.
Yeah.
All I want to say is that Finals MVP does not stand for Game 7 MVP. It's for all 7 games. And yes, Pau was very important with the rebounding. Everything you said was right in terms of how Pau's impact on that series was. Like, we wouldn't have won that series without Pau. But I do want to add that in that final Game 7, everybody shot the ball horribly except for probably Pau in that last series. I mean, in that last game. And also, what I never hear is that people, though you did say this, though, is that Kobe shot like 6 of 24. And I remember I was watching this game during the whole finals, and I was like, Kobe, the shot's not falling. You have to do something else. And that's something I love about Kobe because he's so fundamentally sound. So he focused on playing hard defense, and more importantly, he got the rebounds. And you did say that in that last game, he got 15 boards. So I would like to add that Kobe's impact in that Game 7, of course, wasn't in scoring efficiently at all. But he did crash those boards, and somebody had to hold Paul Pierce and Ray Allen to horrible shooting percentages as well in Game 7. All right, so that's my rant.
Okay. Well, allow me to respond to that.
Okay.
The reason why I don't think Kobe was a Finals MVP that year, or he shouldn't have been. He obviously, technically, he was. He was voted to it. But I would have voted for Gasol. A couple of reasons. The shooting percentages. If you take out Game 7 alone, Pau Gasol still shot a much higher percentage from the field. And he was going up against Kevin Garnett, who's a noted... At that point, he wasn't a dominant scorer, but he's still a pretty good defender, right?
Yeah, great defender.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of KG.
So the shooting percentages, the rebounds, Pau Gasol... I think Pau Gasol was 20 and 11. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Plus, he was blocking a lot of shots. He was around 2.5 blocks per game in that series. I could be wrong with all that, by the way. If you want to look that up while I'm going on my rant, that'd be good. The other thing that I have to mark him down for is Ray Allen tore up Kobe in Game 2, and they forced. I think he set the record for threes in a finals game, and they put the switch with Derek Fisher on Ray Allen the rest of that series. So
and Kobe guarded who then?
Rondo. He guarded Rondo.
Okay.
And he gave...
Pierce. Our test was on Pierce.
Yeah, our test... Yeah. So they were able to make those switches. Now, to Kobe's credit, a lot of people say that Kobe's got this incredible ego and he doesn't listen to coaches. He absolutely listened to the coach then. And maybe 5-6 years prior to that, Kobe would have been like, no, this is my team. I'm going to guard the best player or the better shooter in Ray Allen. And we're just going to live with the consequences. No, he took that responsibility of guarding Rondo, and he took it with pride. And if anything, Rondo was tearing up the league in that playoff run. He made LeBron look pretty bad. He was dominant against the Magic in the conference finals. So Kobe did his role quite well, but he did get absolutely annihilated by Ray Allen in Game 2. Words I never thought would come out of my mouth. Ray Allen annihilating Kobe, but in Game 2 he did. So I think when you add it all up and also place some context with the 2008 finals as to Pau Gasol getting destroyed by Kevin Garnett and Perkins and those guys, and all of a sudden Pau Gasol's turned that around into a massive advantage for them. I've got to lean towards giving the vote. It's close. It wasn't a travesty. It wasn't like Karl Malone getting the MVP over Jordan in '97 or anything. That's stupid. But that's my counter to what you had to say. Did you look up those stats?
Yeah, your stats were very close. Pau Gasol averaged 18.6 points and 11.6 boards, 2.6 blocks. He had a massive Game 7, 19 points, 18 rebounds, even though he shot 37.5% from the field in Game 7. But for that game 7, I feel like everybody shot. I'm looking at it right now. Celtics as a team shot 37. No. The Celtics as a team shot 40.8%. Lakers shot 32.5% in that game.
They won. They won with that. How many offensive rebounds? Do you have those numbers? I'll look that up.
It was the last old school game of the 21st century. That's how you end the first decade.
Okay, so he's. I've got the numbers in front of me now. Pau Gasol. Wow, he had 35 offensive rebounds. This is Dennis Rodman's numbers. 35 offensive rebounds for the entire 7-game series. That's a lot of second chance opportunities. He only had 46 defensive rebounds, to put it into context. So that being said, I mean, there were a lot of opportunities if they're shooting 30% in game 7. Let's pull that up quickly. What else did you disagree with on the book, just as I'm looking up how many offensive boards he got?
It makes me think. I remember the last time we spoke, I'm not a Warriors fan, but I respect the talent they have on their team in terms of this year's team or whatever last year's team, in terms of that huge Big Four was made with KD, Draymond, Steph, and Clay. You had them pretty much losing, spoiler alert, you had them losing pretty much to everybody. So your logic is sound, and you might have changed my mind for the 96 Bulls because Rodman, we all know what Rodman would do, Pippen and Jordan would do, whether it was on offense and on defense. However, what you wrote about was how good of a defender Ron Harper was, and that's something that I don't know. So if Harper could hold up to that extent on the defensive end, then they just might get enough stops, in order to even have a chance in a
in order to have a chance?
Well, I mean, I still want to be respectful. I mean, you were out here, come on, you were saying sweeps in game 5. Come on, sweeps?
Yeah. I'll stick by. I also said they would beat some teams as well. I didn't totally write them off, and some of them would be close. But the 96 Bulls, I think we've talked about this off the air a few times. The reason why you look at what the Warriors do, and they are very one-dimensional on the offensive end. They don't run a whole lot of post-ups. There's baseline to baseline movement, but it's not really from screens unless it was Klay Thompson. But they don't have a whole lot of screeners. It's not like Dale Davis and Antonio Davis with Reggie Miller, for example. So they are one-dimensional on the offensive end. Now, when you line them up against a team like the Bulls, and Ron Harper had success from guarding Tim Hardaway, to John Stockton, pretty much anyone that they would throw at that was small, because he was very quick. His footwork was fantastic, and that was his role, right? So let's not forget that. So all he had to do was focus in on the defensive end. He was not a scorer at all. This wasn't Ron Harper from the Cleveland days. So I've got no doubts that even if you put Jordan on Curry and Ron Harper stays on Thompson, if they have to switch, they don't have to panic. They don't have to throw a double team at them.
Yeah, that's true. And
sorry, go.
And I also wouldn't want to have, even though that Bulls team has 4 very good defenders, 3 of them were all team defensive first team, I think you said.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
But actually Thompson, he's not somebody that's going to break you down. All he does is run around and then shoot.
Sure.
So do you even really need somebody that's good on defense? All you need is a body to chase him around and not get tired.
Well, that's true. I mean, the thing is, though, if Curry's taken out of his game, they may look to Thompson to improve his workload. And when Steph Curry was injured in the 2016 playoffs, Klay Thompson assumed that role because this is before Kevin Durant was there. And he became a 28-point-per-game scorer in the playoffs until Steph Curry returned. So this is why I think that Klay Thompson, if he was on a different team, he may be a top 5 player in the NBA because of what he does on the defensive end, and also his game is so bottled up in his offensive game, so bottled up in
Klay. Wait, hold on a second. You really think Klay with no handles could be a top 5 player if he was on the Bucks or something, or some team where he could eat, like the Lakers?
Yeah. I think the potential's there because we don't know if he has no handles. We just haven't seen him in that role. You know what I mean? But when we have seen him in that role, where the ball he's put in his hands, and they're like, okay, we need you to shoot the ball 25 times a game in the playoffs, he delivers.
Yeah, but I'm saying like it's easier to deliver in the playoffs when one, you're already a phenomenal talent in terms of how you can shoot the basketball, and you're playing next to the greatest shooter of all time in Curry, and now you have the addition of Kevin Durant. Like, I don't really give high praise to all three of them whenever they go off, because to me they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay,
when you're that talented.
Yeah. Just keep in mind that when he did this, right, Steph Curry was out for 10 games or whatever it was, and they didn't have Kevin Durant. So the next best offensive player they had was actually Harrison Barnes.
Okay, Clay, who averaged 20 this year, mind you, Harrison Barnes. Shout out my fantasy team.
Give me a shout out to your fantasy team. What's the name of him?
Oh, fantasy team name is actually August Jones, which goes back to high school in NBA Live 2004 franchise mode. And the computer made this sick fake point guard in the 2004 draft. And his name was actually August Jones. And it was, he was awesome. And all my friends from high school are fabled of all these stories about him going off in franchise mode.
It sounds like you should write a book about your video game stories, man.
The story of August Jones.
Yeah, why not? Or make a movie about August Jones. Forget Jesus Shuttlesworth and just, August Jones, a legend of August Jones. Can I get his jersey? What team did he play for? Obviously the Lakers, right?
No, the Washington Wizards, baby, hometown.
Oh, but you said we before when you were talking about the Lakers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, because the funny thing is, I became a Lakers fan, actually, in 2004. So
what after they lost, or
yes. I became, because the story of how I became a fan of Kobe Bryant, because back in the 90s and also the early 2000s, back then my favorite player probably was AI because everybody liked him, but I didn't really watch basketball like that. You watch casual, like, oh, you hear Kobe drop 35, Shaq's eating, they win 3 rings.
Right.
So I remember it was game 2 of the 2004 series versus the Pistons. And I was like, I'm actually going to watch this game and then see why does everybody think Kobe Bryant is so good at basketball. So I'm actually just going to pay attention and give it my undivided attention and watch him play. Sure enough, in that terrible series, that was the best game he had. And that was also the game where he hit the shot to force it to OT.
Yep.
And I was like, so just watching the whole game, I was like, oh my God, this guy's amazing.
Did you watch any of the other games that series? Or?
Oh, yes, but it didn't matter.
Oh,
I saw game 2. And then after that, he struggled in 2005 for as good of a player he is. And then in 2006.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he tore up the league in 2006.
Yeah, and then I was like, it was over. And then the only thing I actually said in 2006 and also 2007 was just give this guy a quality all-star, and it's a wrap because he's that good. I don't care about Phoenix Suns. I don't care about the Spurs. Just give him a quality all-star, and it's a wrap, and that's what happened.
Yeah. So, it's 100%. I mean, his supporting cast was no joke in that second three-peat as well, outside of Gasol. I mean, he had Lamar Odom coming off the bench. That's an embarrassment of riches if ever you wanted.
Yeah, true. But, I mean, it's not like Pau Gasol with Shaq or Pippen or Wade or, guys like that.
That's true. I'll give you that. He is a Hall of Famer. A lot of that gets skewed because he's an international player, so the impact he made internationally. But even if he was an American, I still think without a shadow of a doubt that guy's a Hall of Famer. But he's not of that Dwayne Wade. I mean, Dwayne Wade was an MVP candidate in 2009, I want to say it was.
Yeah, 2009.
And obviously Scottie Pippen was an MVP candidate in 94. So you're right. Some of the supporting cast, it doesn't match up with those guys, but he's still no joke. He was very, very good on the Lakers. But Kobe made him. Let's not forget that before Pau Gasol went to the Lakers, he hadn't won one single playoff game.
Yeah, it's rough in the West.
No kidding, man. But getting back to your original point about whether I was too harsh on the Warriors or not, look, I often think that maybe I was a little bit too harsh on them, but then I think I look at it from the standpoint, a lot of these teams, they can counter things and they can take away what they do best. Now, can the Warriors then give them something else, a different look? Like we talked about this, or you talked about this a second ago when you're talking about Kobe. When Kobe was struggling, his game was so complete. He focused defensively and he hit the glass And he started passing the ball a lot more. Remember, Meta World Peace or Ron Artest, whatever you want to call him, started hitting threes. Derek Fisher hit huge threes in that game as well.
That's a great game, Seven.
But I'm not sure if the Warriors have that level. If like, say, the Detroit Pistons, for example, who are a great defensive team, if they can get and rough them up a little bit and get inside their head the same way the Cavs did in 2016. I mean, if LeBron James is able to get inside Draymond Green's head, what do you think Bill Laimbeer and Sally and Rodman and...
Yeah, that was 100% true when you actually wrote that. And for that, I would probably have to have the Pistons beat them too. Because also with Curry, KD, I don't know anything about Thompson, but the only person who I think has that dog in him, has that fight in terms of that starts on that team is actually Green.
But he doesn't know how to control it either, though.
Yeah. So then, if he's going up against Rodman, I mean, I'll give it to the 96 Bulls because of how good Harper is on defense, in addition to, of course, with Scottie, Jordan, and also Rodman. I just can't say sweep because I'm not a fan of Kevin Durant, but I think he is a phenomenal all-world, all-time talent. And when you have somebody like that paired with this supporting cast, I mean, games are going to be won no matter who you're playing. Games, it's just odds.
I'm not too adamant that it's going to be a sweep, but there's no question in my mind that the Bulls win emphatically. What about the 2001 Lakers? Do you think they beat the Warriors?
I mean, it's hard to say you're wrong because they have no answer for Shaq. They have no answer for any of these bigs, whether it's Olajuwon, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Wilt. They have no answer. So, like Shaq literally averaged 50. This was prime Shaq.
Yeah.
So, yeah, probably because all that's going to lead is Green is going to get into foul trouble. So if the Warriors can keep up and score enough points with the Lakers, now I remember, back then it's just the 2001 Lakers with Shaq and Kobe. So who else was actually scoring on that team?
Derek Fisher.
So
Derek Fisher shot about 65% from threes in the Western Conference playoffs. All the way through. He struggled against Philly, but he was guarding Iverson. That would wear anybody out.
Yeah.
But they also, I think I wrote this in the book. I can't remember. I read the book a while ago. So I think the combination of Robert Horry and Horace Grant.
Oh yeah, Horry was on that team. So then if you have because if you're playing the Warriors, you're putting 2, maybe 3 guys on Shaq. It's just naturally somebody that big.
Yeah, so there's going to be open looks, and plus the defense collapses on Kobe. I mean, how do they even guard Kobe without Shaq?
No, Kobe, you can't. If you have Shaq, you can't double Kobe. Like, it's impossible. So if you have Klay on Kobe, like,
that's going to be a savagery. If you put Klay Thompson on Kobe,
Warriors are a defensive stopper. I mean, I just like it, but just like, I mean, well, put it this way: how easily or how hard could the 2001 Lakers D up on the Warriors? Like, who do they have on the perimeter to play defense? I know Brian is great at defense. I know Rick Fox was good back then.
Fisher.
Yes, he could bother Curry because all he could do was focus on defense and then just stand in that corner and shoot threes when they were on offense.
Yeah.
So
I would do it. Now, this is why I think the 2015 Warriors would have a better shot against the Lakers, because then you could isolate. Because remember, they had that lineup of depth, and this is when Iguodala was actually able to play 40 minutes a game. And you had Harrison Barnes, who obviously isn't Kevin Durant, but if they were able to play Iggy, then maybe it's kind of like a college basketball situation. But it's a 7-game series. It's not the tournament, so I mean, you can't really expect to be able to get away with that for 7 games. So I think you would go with a lineup with Fisher on Steph Curry, the same way that they played Iverson in the finals. You have probably Kobe on Durant and Rick Fox on Klay Thompson. Now those guys would probably switch. You could also, but the thing is, you could press up on these guys. If they get into the lane, they're dealing with Horry, they're dealing with Shaq.
Yeah, Kevin Durant has never driven on somebody like Shaq.
Yeah, and Shaq would have no hesitation in laying him out.
I can't argue with you. I can't argue.
Well, that's the end of the podcast, guys.
Okay. Wait.
Sorry.
Who are your top 5 players now in 2017 for this season?
What was that, sorry?
Who are your top 5 players?
Oh, right now?
Yeah.
In order?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I should be prepared for that. I go with Harden right now.
Wait, no. Not like this season. Just like
all time.
No. Not like all time, but like Harden's having the best. Wait, do you think Harden's better than James?
Right now, yeah. This season he's played better.
Okay, this season he's played better, but I guess try and encompass because if you were starting a team right now and you only played for one season, you wouldn't pick Harden above James, right?
Sure, I would. Absolutely, I would.
Why? Because LeBron's not playing defense?
That's a big reason. Well, Harden doesn't play defense either. So, I mean, not at a great level. So they kind of cannibalize themselves on that end of the court. If either of them, one of them played defense, they'd become the definitive winner out of those two.
But if James wanted to play defense, or I'm going to assume James is going to start playing defense once the postseason starts. Yeah.
Did he do that in the finals last year?
He tried.
He tried? In the fourth quarter?
Okay, fine. Last year's James or this year's James Harden?
Oh, James Harden. This year's James Harden. No question.
What are you talking about?
Look, if you go back to 2016, it's LeBron. There's no question. But 2017, 2018, LeBron does a lot of things great. And this is the best I've ever seen him from a scoring standpoint in a season. He looks so comfortable scoring. It's not funny. His jumper is on. He's actually getting into the post. He's still turning the ball over a lot, but because he has the ball in his hands that much, I can live with it. But the defensive end of it, it's kind of insulting. And whether he can turn it on or turn it off, but that's no excuse, because we all thought he could turn it on last year's playoffs too, because he turned it off during the regular season also. And then in the playoffs, he wasn't tested in the playoffs. I mean, who did he go up against? Paul George? He didn't even guard Paul George in the first round. And then all the way through, he was taking for being the most versatile defender in the league, apparently. All that meant was he was guarding the weakest defender. He was taking the weakest defender he possibly could, whilst other people were guarding the Paul Georges or the DeRozans or whoever.
Well, I love to say,
sorry?
My cousin would love you because he is the biggest LeBron James hater on the planet.
I'm not a hater of him. Look, I want him.
I'm not sure I hate it. You're just stating facts in terms of what you're saying. Well, I will say this: the last time he made the all defensive team was in 2014. Is that fair?
And even 2014 might be a bit questionable because Kawhi Leonard ripped him up in the finals. He shot 65% from the field, and yeah, he didn't average 35 a game, but that's not Kawhi's game. He wasn't even an all-star then.
Yeah.
And that final series was just an absolute joke. I mean, it was Patty Mills, it was Tony Parker, it was Manu Ginobili, it was obviously Danny Green. They were just taking turns on LeBron. Whoever LeBron was, they just went ISO with and just tore him up. It was actually quite disturbing.
So I'll ask you this. If you switch James with 2009 Kobe on that 2014 Heat team versus the Spurs, what happens?
It's definitely not a 5-game series. I think it's probably a longer series, but I think that Spurs team probably still wins.
You think the Spurs will win? Okay.
Because Dwayne Wade was pretty burnt out at that stage. Chalmers wasn't giving him anything. Chris Bosh was okay, actually. Haslam wasn't doing a whole lot. Birdman was okay. Battier was burnt out. I think there was some genuine fatigue with some of their veterans. 2009 Kobe though would have given it. He would definitely have gone down swinging. Yeah. And that's the problem I've always had with LeBron. There's situations where I always reference back to the 2001 finals with the Lakers, who are unbeaten. They're going up against Philly, who barely made the finals by the skin of their teeth. They're back-to-back 7-game series just to get to the finals. They're down 16-5. Iverson, just like Jordan, just like Bird, just like Magic, and just like Kobe as well, obviously, had that ability to just change the flow of the game and just change the pace and the intensity of the game, and the teammates all followed him. I have never, up until probably 2015, I've never seen that out of LeBron. And that's the year they lost when they had Dellavedova started.
Yeah. Because the only time James plays like that is when he absolutely has to. That's when Kyrie and Love were gone for the entire series. So he was like, okay, I'll finally start playing like how everybody wants him to play.
But that was such a tease, though, because in 2016 he did it as well in the final 3 games of that series. Because if he played like that, If his career was filled with those moments.
Yeah, in 2016, I was watching. I was like, they can win this series. LeBron, just take it to the hole.
That's what he did. That's what he did. He just killed them. And then they had to, when they had to switch up, I remember they had Spates on him a few times and Azili. He was dunking on 7-footers and going right through the contact. It was incredible. At that point, I actually put LeBron ahead of Larry Bird, ahead of Magic. I had him on the Mount Rushmore for a split second after that series. Now, he's disappointed me since because we haven't seen that level of intensity. His numbers are fantastic, but numbers aren't everything. Just the same way that championships aren't everything.
Yeah.
So, I can't... Look, I'm still not sure what you're asking me, like, in terms of the top 5 players right now. Are you saying, like, the top 5 players of their career that are still playing right now, or...?
No, fine, no. Just top 5 players in the year 2017 to 2018.
James Harden still,
Okay.
but the reason for that is he's had sustained success, at least in the regular season. And I can't hold it against him losing to the Spurs because that Spurs team played the Warriors much better than what the Cavs did. And the Cavs, you put that Rockets team in the East, they make in the finals without question. And you put that Cavs team in the East, or in the West, sorry, and I don't think they do any better than what the Rockets did. So that success of making the finals means nothing to me in terms of context. That's just the unluck of the draw for Houston playing in the West. So I got Harden ahead of, and believe me, I've never been a fan of James Harden. People think that I'm a James Harden fan, but he just deserves this recognition. If you asked me this question about a month ago, I probably would have had Westbrook at number 2, but no more. He's I don't think he sees the game on the offensive end the way that he should as a point guard. If he had John Stockton's vision, my goodness, what he would be able to do. But he's kind of reminds me of a north-south running back. You know what I mean? He doesn't. He instead of slowing up and letting some of the blockers help him out, he doesn't do that. He just sees 3 guys ahead of him. He's like, "Oh, I'll run through them." And
it was frustrating to watch sometimes.
Yeah, so I think I can't put him there. I probably, honestly, I would love to put Kawhi Leonard there, but obviously he hasn't played much this year at all. If it was just from last year, I'd be tempted to put him there. LeBron has disappointed me quite a bit, but he's still the top 5 player in the league, without question. I mean, if the Cavs make the finals, regardless of who it's against, whether it's Houston or Golden State or whoever, if it's up against the Cavs, people will still give the Cavs a fighting chance because of LeBron James. Because we've seen it before at times when he has taken over and has been dominant.
Okay.
So, in terms of, honestly, Kevin Durant's there too, but I'm not sure if I would take Kevin Durant over LeBron at this stage. Because they both have major holes and major question marks alongside them. And I know Kevin Durant won the title last year, but do we classify him as a winner for jumping on that Warriors team?
Technically he is a winner. Technically he is a champion. I always have never been a fan of saying, "Oh, it was a fake championship" and all that, because he still did his job. But I just don't. He doesn't have, to me, the same respect that he does with other champions.
Sure.
Like, I respect all of James's rings in Miami. I don't respect Kevin Durant's ring with Golden State. I mean, the team, and he jumped on that team with 3 other All-Stars, all NBA players. Defensive Player of the Year, greatest shooter of all time, top 5 shooter of all time, probably, in Clay. Yeah. And they just beat you 3-1. Like, come on. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, you're 100% right in terms of respecting it, but I still can't. See, for example, when you look at Hakeem Olajuwon's rings, or you look at Dwayne Wade's ring in 2006, or you look at Dirk's ring in 2011, or some of LeBron's rings, or even Steph Curry's in 2015. Yeah. You respect them because they had moments of truth throughout those playoffs where they had to stand up, and they were challenged. And quite honestly, the one time they were challenged, or there was a couple of times in the finals too, but the one time getting to the finals, they lucked out big time by one of the dirtiest plays that we've seen in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, we celebrate dirty plays in the 80s and 90s, but yet we get upset over Zaza Pachulia." No, that was filthy. That would, you know what? If I was commissioner of the league, I would have kicked him out for that because he took about four additional steps after the closeout to make sure that his feet were underneath Leonard's when he came down. Mm-hmm. And this is a big reason. I don't want to harp on the Warriors too much here, but this is a big reason why I can't put the Warriors over too many great teams at this stage. Because we don't know exactly how that conference finals. We were robbed of that. In order to be a great team, you need to prove your greatness. You need to go through the Utah Jazz with, two Hall of Famers, two of the very best at their positions. And not just their positions, but their roles. Karl Malone, number 2 scorer of all time. John Stockton, number 1 assist of all time. So that's their roles, and that's how good they were at it. They were masters at their craft, and the Bulls were able to beat them twice. And then the Bulls also beat Magic. Magic was only 31. Everyone says that he was old. The Bulls also went through the Detroit Pistons. They had 3 Hall of Famers on that team, and there was a lot of mileage on those tires, but they weren't old. Isaiah Thomas was only 30 at that point in his career. They still had plenty left. Clyde Drexler, runner-up in the MVP voting in '92. Jordan annihilated him. How many times did he beat Ewing? He swept the '96 Orlando Magic. So the point I'm trying to make here with all of this is the Bulls were validated by their competition and who they went through. The Warriors last year, they're not validated because who did they go through? They went through the Utah Jazz with Joe Ingles as their second best player. And no disrespect to Joe Ingles, he's from my country, but he's not a great player, and that doesn't give him any points whatsoever. They went through a Portland team that, by the skin of their teeth, made the playoffs. They were looking horrible all year. And then they went through the Spurs, missing their best player, and LaMarcus Aldridge was not an all-star last year. In fact, they were looking to trade him, and they couldn't get anything for him. And that's why they kept him. So, I know that was a bit of a rant there, but the point is, you need to be validated by who you've gone through, and Kevin Durant still is yet to go through anybody. This whole concept of, well, look at how good the Cavs are on paper. Okay, but let's look at how good the Warriors are on paper. So therefore, Kevin Durant still has that advantage. I'm not giving him any advantage of or any credit for going through Cleveland when he has a better team. If he has a worse team than Cleveland, sure. Like if it's just say if Allen Iverson went through the 2001 Lakers. Yeah. That would mean so much because that 2001 Lakers team was absolutely stacked. You listed your top 10 players of all time. Kobe at number 3. I think Shaq was at number 7. To give you an idea of just how loaded and those guys were at least in their athletic primes. Kobe's maturation wasn't quite there. So if Iverson had gone through that team, then we'd give him all the credit in the world. We might even talk about Iverson as a top 15 player of all time had he pulled that off. But
wait.
Sorry, go.
It's like, I don't know.
Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there, but in terms of Kevin Durant, I would probably take LeBron over Kevin Durant.
Okay.
It's kind of a long way of putting
it. No, man. Hey, man, preach.
I know you're not a big historian of the game, but you do watch a lot of the current topics and the current of what's going on in the modern NBA. What do you think about Kyrie Irving's injury, and how does that affect the Eastern Conference landscape?
Jeez, the Eastern Conference has been soft for literally like a decade.
Oh, much more than that, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, I mean, so because 2009, because the Celtics performed in 07 to 08.
Yep.
So I guess they were the only team because that Cavs team back then, that's all James had back in 08 and 09, 07 and all that stuff. So, but anyway, the only team that you think really has a chance against Cleveland, I guess Toronto, which I am not a believer. I'll say I'll believe it when I see it.
Sure.
So,
what about Philly?
I don't trust them. I feel like Embiid's going to get hurt in like game 2. And
well, he's held up pretty well this season, though.
Yeah, he has with his 63 games. I was just checking out his numbers today, randomly, probably because they were talking about him. We'll see, but they're young though. Young teams don't know how to win in the playoffs, and I think LeBron, I think people are scared of him, and they'll let him, just do whatever he does. So I just don't think Philly will respond and just punch Cleveland back in the mouth and then fight.
Sure.
The Wizards aren't going to do anything. Miami, please. They just don't have enough talent.
Right.
Like, the only team that's talented enough to beat them is the Sixers. And I just don't think they're ready yet to beat Cleveland first round. If they face them first round. Right now, Cavs are the third seed. Sixers are sixth seed at the time of this recording. So we'll see how the seeding all comes down to it. But hey, with that said, Philadelphia, I believe, has the best shot to beat them. I would love to see it. Yeah.
I like what you said about the Raptors. I've got no idea how good they've definitely improved. I'll give them that.
But it's the same team as last year, though, right? Like, who's new on that team from last year?
Nobody. Ibaka's a little bit more settled in.
Yes,
but they seem to be playing with a little bit more of an edge than what they have in previous regular seasons. I wouldn't shock me if they made it, but it also wouldn't shock me if they lost in the second round to, say, Philly or something like that. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. I
hope so. I would love it for Cleveland to lose. I mean, I'm a fan of LeBron James, but it just pisses me off. You have all these kids out here saying James is the GOAT, better than Jordan. It makes you want to root against him, because I have actually rooted for James for every single finals except last year's finals, because I knew if he won last year's finals, people would be like, "Oh, that's it. He's the GOAT." End of story.
Well, I don't mind that. I like, people think that I'm, this old bastard who's, grown up and think, oh no, Jordan's the greatest. LeBron can't hold it. I want to see the evolution of basketball continue to improve, and we haven't seen that. I think the dirty little secret in all of this is we may have to come to terms with the fact that we may never see a basketball player better than Jordan.
Yeah, I've already come to terms with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
But I think the media has to come to terms with that, because they're the one pushing this. If you watch a lot of those shows, and I try to avoid those shows so bad because they're toxic, but I get sent a lot of clips like, hey, what do you think of this or whatever, and I'll watch them. I'm like, oh, I can see why a lot of people like regurgitate what they say, but it goes unchecked. Like a lot of these idiotic points. For example, it never gets talked about LeBron losing in 2010 against the Celtics. And that team was over the hill. Rajon Rondo, as I said before, was their best player. They had their quote-unquote big three, but Ray Allen wasn't a dominant player. Kevin Garnett was definitely not a dominant player. Paul Pierce was shooting pretty bad. Rondo carried them in the playoffs, and they wiped the floor with the Cavs, who won 60-plus games. LeBron was the MVP. That never gets talked about. But in these debates on Fox Sports 1 and ESPN, they are so quick to point out that Jordan, who only played 17 games that season, lost to the Orlando Magic after returning, and they say, oh, he took a rest. No, his father was murdered. He went on a sabbatical because his father was murdered.
Yeah.
I mean, let's keep that in perspective. And he took a rest because he couldn't handle the pressure. I think he handled the pressure pretty well. He won 3 straight titles. Yeah. He was handling the pressure pretty well. He just went on a sabbatical. And then the other thing that gets thrown out, I think Shannon Sharp says this quite a lot of times. Well, why couldn't he beat the Celtics in the 80s? Well, that was one of the greatest teams of all time. They had 5 Hall of Famers. Jordan's second best player was Charles Oakley.
Oh, boy.
So, and the fact that they were even competitive, and people that, I don't want to go on another tangent here, so I'll sum this up quickly, but in game 2, when Jordan scored 63 points, and they're saying, oh, well, they still lost the game. At the end of regulation, the Bulls were down by 2, Jordan got fouled shooting a 3. And you would think, oh, well, he must have missed 1 because it went to double overtime. That's not the case. Back then, the rule in the NBA was, if you're fouled shooting a 3, you only got 2 foul shots. So he should have had 3 foul shots. He should have ended that game then.
Wait a second. Okay. Wait, what? If you got fouled shooting a 3 back then, you only got 2 shots?
Yes. If you're fouled shooting a 3 and you miss it, now, of course, if you make it, you get a 4-point play opportunity. But back then, if you're fouled shooting a 3, and I don't know when this rule changed, but I was watching that game and I was blown away by this too. You only get 2 shots.
That's crazy. So you were down by 3 with less than 24 seconds left, and then you only got 2 free throws, and then they had to play the fouling game?
Pretty much. I mean, you're obviously running the risk as well as they make the 3 and they get and you foul them, they could turn into a 4-point play.
4-point play. That's true. Yeah.
But still, if you hard foul them and make sure they definitely don't get that shot up, it works out for you.
Back then.
Yeah. I mean, keep in mind too that this was the fourth year of the 3-point line being in the NBA. So teams hadn't figured out all this, how to use it. I don't even think there was a 3-point line in college at that stage either. Maybe in 86 it was, but not in 84. But yeah, that's my point. That they say, he couldn't even win one game against the Celtics. He should have. They should have. If that rule was fair, you're shooting a 3-pointer, you should get 3 foul shots. But anyway.
Man, they get you in all these shows, man.
Oh no, I'm good, man. I think my sanity would be fine if I never appear on them. So, I want to ask you something because this has turned into more of a show about me. So let's get some more of your thoughts on some of this stuff.
Okay.
The Rockets. Where do you see the Rockets? Obviously, the number 1 seed. They've got home court throughout.
Yeah.
Everybody's concerned with Golden State. Even if Golden State's healthy, do you give the Rockets a chance to win?
Yes. If Golden State's healthy, I give the Rockets a chance to win. I don't think they will win. Because I just don't see who's guarding all these people on Golden State. Like, I know they have Trevor Ariza and Chris Paul is good on defense, though Curry always smokes Chris Paul, it seems like.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And then you have Harden's guarding who? Like, I guess Clay, okay, and Draymond will just do his stuff. Clint Capella, he's all right on defense. He's good at getting those boards. But at the same time, they don't have that post presence. They don't have somebody that you need whenever you can, like, go down low, which the Warriors don't either. So, just going to be going back at it. But at the end of the, at the end of the day, Rockets have 2 All-Stars, Warriors have 4. I think that math would just add up to Golden State's favor. Now, if Steph's not playing, I think the Rockets win.
Okay. Well, what if Steph's playing at, say, 75%?
The Warriors win.
Okay. At what percentage? Like, if Steph Curry at 100% is him in the finals last year, and him being at 10% is what he was in the 2016 finals. What percentage? Where does he have to be for the Rockets to have a chance? Is it 40%? Is it 60%?
Oh, so are you saying if Curry plays and he's as good as he was in 2016 finals?
Yeah, which wasn't very good at all.
If Curry, because a lot of people say that. I don't know. I didn't see it.
You didn't see LeBron standing over the top of him and blocking his shots and getting his face and he's dribbling the ball out of bounds. And
6'3" and James like 6'9". But I will say this. I don't know. I could be crazy. If Curry's even that healthy, I still think the Warriors will win.
Okay.
Until in Game 7 at the very end.
Here's why I like the Rockets' chances. Is they play a very similar style to Golden State, but they do it better. And what I mean by they do it better is when these two teams play against each other, you see the Warriors try to slow down the pace. This is the only team they ever try to do this. They try to slow down the pace against the Rockets because got to keep him. You're right that they only have 2 All-Stars, but they have a lot more depth, offensive depth, from 1 to 8 than what the Warriors do. So I like their chances in a long series, but let's be honest, they have absolutely no one that can really guard somebody of the caliber of Kevin Durant.
You have to put Trevor Ariza on him.
But Trevor Ariza he's not a Scottie Pippen, he's not a Kawhi Leonard. Kevin Durant's one of the greatest scorers of all time. Trevor Ariza is, at this point of his career, he's not a dominant defender.
Yeah, no, but who else do they have out there?
But that's the question. Like, can they answer that question? I don't think they like, okay, that's the answer to the questions they put Trevor Ariza, but can Trevor Ariza actually slow Kevin Durant down?
Of course not. No.
And that's a big problem that they got to figure out, because Klay Thompson can, at some level, he can at least slow down James Harden, or at least make him work.
Yeah.
And Chris Paul, I'm not sure if Chris Paul can. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Chris Paul responds to going up against Steph Curry this year. Because in the previous years, you're right, Steph Curry would give it to him, but Chris Paul had to do everything on those Clippers teams in terms of micromanaging that offense. Whether that was counterproductive or not, that's what he was doing. So his defensive game wasn't quite up. He's played at such a great level defensively this year that I think he has an opportunity to at least slow down Curry in this season, especially if he's not healthy.
Okay.
But
because I think the Warriors are favored, especially if Curry. I mean, as I said, if Curry's even as healthy as he was in 2016, I'm still going to give it to Golden State and expect Golden State to win, because that's how I feel about players that have phenomenal talent. You do what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And Kevin Durant needs to do what he's supposed to do. Like we just said, who is checking you? Trevor Ariza? Okay, go to work.
Give me 35 a game, yeah.
More than that, you too. Go to work.
I will say this, though, for all the things I've said about the Warriors, if they get through with the injury concerns with Steph Curry, if they get through, there's a chance that they may actually play Oklahoma in the first round. Because I'm looking at the standings now. Oklahoma's only half a game ahead of the Timberwolves for the 7th seed. So there's a chance they'll have to go through Oklahoma, Portland, Houston, just to get to the NBA Finals, and which will probably be Cleveland again, right? If they go through all 4 of those teams, they would have absolutely had to fight and scratch and claw their way to that title.
That's only if Curry's hurt, though. That's only if Curry's banged up, which he is, because Curry's out for round 1, right?
Yes. But you never know. I mean, if they're down 3-1, he may come back. He's pretty resilient with some of these injuries, man. He gets knocked around a bit. People think he's soft, or he has shown a level of toughness to play through injuries before. So as I said, if Golden State wins it this year, they would have had to earn it, and whereas in previous years they haven't had to earn it. Both their titles, you could say, they really didn't earn it. They got lucky in injuries throughout their first title. So if they get it this year, I'll rethink a lot as to where they line up historically. Okay. But I'll ask you if you're starting a team right now. So I'm going to put a different spin off the question you asked me before. But if you're starting a team right now, would you be taking LeBron with the first pick overall for one season?
For one season, yes, no question. Me for one season.
A guy ahead of guys like Anthony Davis. I forgot about Anthony Davis. He deserves consideration in that list as well.
He does. But if we're just talking about for one season, yeah, because James makes people so much better.
Stop it! No, stop.
James makes people better.
He does not. How did he make Isaiah Thomas better?
Oh, that's because Isaiah's had a bad hip the whole time.
Okay, how did Kyrie Irving go from being, a sidekick to an MVP candidate when he went to Boston?
Well, if you actually look, Kyrie's pretty much putting up a lot of the same type of numbers he put up in Cleveland, if not less.
Well, no, I'm not talking in terms of production, but just his leadership on the court and things of that nature.
Well, it's a basketball team, only 15 people. It's kind of hard to have 2 people being the alpha dog. Just ask Shaq and Kobe that.
Well, so they would tell you it was easy. They went 15-1 in the playoffs.
No, but you know who was the alpha? They still butted head. But when you have phenomenal talent like that, you just find a way. Kobe, Shaq, that's what you do.
Here's what has me concerned about LeBron. In terms of a skilled player, in terms of what they can bring to the court, I would agree with you. He's very complete on the offensive end. And there's no combination, maybe in NBA history, by the way, of someone that can score and pass of the same level of what LeBron is doing.
What about Jordan? What about Jordan? Because
people
sleep on his passing game.
Well, no, Jordan was a brilliant passer, but his mindset was score first, and then if the double comes, I'll take what the defense gives me. If I'm isolated, then I'll exploit that. But if the double comes, then I'll kick it. Whereas LeBron at certain times, he will set up his teammates a little bit better than what Jordan would set up his teammates. Now, that may have just been the role, because you've got Scottie Pippen, who was a great facilitator as well alongside Jordan, so Jordan may not have had to really focus on that. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened had Jordan never developed Scottie Pippen, because a lot of that came from just practice and really him pushing Scottie Pippen to become that great player. Now, what I would say this about LeBron is, though, you need to... in a LeBron James offense, it doesn't matter what the skills are of the players around him, he demands them to play a specific role, which is basically be spot-up shooters. Unless if it's a Kyrie Irving or a Dwayne Wade, where it's kind of a situation of your turn, my turn. We'll take turns at it. But they never really see him get better. You never really see him make their teammates better. And that's disappointing because he's had Chris Bosh, he's had Kevin Love, he's had Dwayne Wade, he's had, great players alongside. But unless if they make their outside shots, he never makes them better.
Well, that's true. He has never even came close to making Bosh or Love better. So do you think that's just an unfair statement that people say, or because of how bad those Cavs teams were on his first time on the Cavaliers?
I think it's that. It's also the assist numbers. I think people desperately want him to be like Jordan or Magic Johnson or a clone or a hybrid between the two of them. But I think they see the assist numbers, which are fantastic, but you got to remember the ball's in his hands most of the time, regardless of who's playing alongside him. I don't think it's an accurate stat. It's almost as when people this is along with the defensive. He's people saying he can guard all 5 positions and he's a great defender and all that garbage. He's great at chase down blocks. I'll give him that. But highlight blocks don't make you a great defender. Those are the two things that really irritate me about him. The fact that he hasn't... people forget he did play with Shaq. I know Shaq was old, but the year that Shaq played alongside LeBron, the year prior to that, he was an All-NBA third-team player and the All-Star Game MVP and averaged 20 and 8 in Phoenix. He wasn't a chump, and we saw exactly how bad LeBron played alongside him.
Because he couldn't get out the paint.
Exactly, and to me, compare that to say a Chris Paul, who I've never been a fan or complimentary of because he's always struggled in the playoffs mightily. Look at what Chris Paul's done this year. He has not gotten in James Harden's way. He's been like, okay, when James Harden is struggling a little bit, I'll take over. Beyond that, I'll work on my defense, I'll work on my leadership, I'll distribute the ball a little bit better. If the ball comes my way and I'm open, I'll shoot it and I'll score it. And there's a reason they've got that insane record, or 34-2, when him, Harden, and Capella are all playing together. That's unbelievable.
Interesting. So then, how come Cleveland was able to make the finals in 2007 with Big Z? Because Big Z wasn't stretching the floor at all, especially back then.
Oh, that team was up there with Philly as the worst teams to ever make the finals. But let's also keep it in perspective. They beat the Wizards. They beat the Nets. Both teams were at 41 games. So they beat two 500 teams, and then they beat Detroit. And Detroit didn't have Ben Wallace. They got rid of Ben Wallace and they replaced him with Chris Webber, who was in the final year of his career. So you think back to what LeBron did in the 2016 finals where the lane just opened up. That was the same situation up against Detroit. And that's why you saw that incredible performance in, what was it, 48, 49 points with 29 in a row or 29 of the last 30. That was a great game. It was one of the most historic games you'll ever see. Maybe the best game in Detroit, in the city of Detroit, at least from a pro standpoint. So that's the reason they made the finals. But what happened once they made the finals? They got swept. And they lost pretty much. I think they lost every game by double digits.
Wow.
So if we're being honest about it, I think the Spurs, any team from the Western Conference would have beaten that Cavs team. Whether it was the Lakers, whether it was the Suns, whether it was the Clippers. The Clippers had a pretty good year that year, I think. Or maybe that was the year prior to that. The Nuggets. I think that was the year that Dirk got knocked down in the first round. So Golden State would have knocked them off. Utah would have.
Yeah, no, Dirk out in 2007, his MVP year. So
that was the year that the Cavs made the finals. So pretty much any team, you could have picked any team that made the playoffs from the West that year, and they would have knocked off the Cavs, I believe. I don't think it would have been a sweep for every team, but that's the reason they made the finals. Though. But also, you asked about like in terms of players alongside him. People forget that in that final game, there was Game 6 again, because Game 5 was that game that he scored all those points against Detroit and put him up 3-2. They had a closeout game at home. LeBron was like 5 of 19 at home, and it was Booby Gibson of all people who had 32 points and got him over the line.
Are you serious?
Yeah, look that up. Yeah, it was.
I didn't remember that. Oh man, that's crazy.
People don't talk about that, man. It's absolutely insanity.
It's a narrative that they're pushing.
Of course it is, and it's all marketing, and people know that. And It's disappointing because there is a lot of substance to LeBron's greatness. I've got him in my top 10, and he deserves to be in my top 10. But he doesn't deserve to be in this. Let's be honest, he doesn't deserve to be in the conversation with Jordan. He deserves more. The conversation that needs to be had is him versus Kobe.
Yeah.
That's the conversation I'd love to have with people. But people think that's somehow disrespectful to LeBron. Are you kidding me? Kobe scored 81 points in a game. He's a 5-time champion. He's won an MVP. He's scored what? He's the 3rd all-time leading scorer behind Karl Malone and Kareem. Mm-hmm. And yet they think that's insulting. It's not an insult to even compare Kobe to Jordan, to be honest with you. Every time Jordan wins it, but it's not an insult to compare the two. It's not like you're comparing Ilgauskas to Dirk Nowitzki, for example.
Yep. Chris Webber was starting.
Yep.
It was Chris Webber, Rasheed Wallace, Chauncey Rip, and Tayshaun Prince.
So 0 shot blocking, really.
James, Ilgauskas, Gooden, Sasha Pavlovich.
Yeah, that's pretty bad as well.
And Larry Hughes was on that team. Oh, I didn't know Hughes was on that team. Because Hughes was a solid player.
He was a pretty good defensive player. I remember him in playing alongside Iverson early on. And people thought that he was going to... weren't they called the Flight Brothers or something? Because Iverson used to set him up with alley-oops. Something silly like that. Philly always seems to overreact with their basketball team, the Flight Brothers.
All right, I'm seeing it now. Let's see. Here's the stats. Where's Cleveland? Too many advanced stats making my head hurt. Here we go. Standard stats. Boobie Gibson had 31 points in 29 minutes.
Well, I was close. I said 32 points.
5 of 5 threes. LeBron had 20, but he also had 14 rebounds and 8 assists.
What was his shooting percentage?
It's 27%.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was 14 from the free throw line.
He was what at the foul line?
14 of 19. I've never heard of LeBron taking 19 free throws in one game.
Well, I guess you could answer your question as to who the league wanted in the finals that year. 19 foul shots for LeBron.
Wow.
How many turnovers did he have? Did he have a lot of turnovers?
He had 15 free throws. No, he had 2 turnovers. James had 3.
Oh, that's decent.
Boobie Gibson had 15 free throws? How?
I guess they were fouling him. He was making so many shots.
Oh, my gosh. I might have to rewatch this game.
I'm kind of impressed at myself that I was 1 point off. That was, a game 11 years ago that nobody talks about, and I said 32 points.
All this knowledge you're spewing
but
makes me change